Welcome to Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. I'm Monica Johnson, Communications Content Specialist at Planet Aid, and I'm going to be your guide for this journey as we take challenging situations and try to simplify them. And it's also an opportunity for us to talk to incredible individuals at the forefront of developing and implementing sustainable solutions. Change is not only possible, but it's essential, and it begins with understanding. So before we introduce our guest today, just a reminder for you to please hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comment so that we can make sure that these sustainable solutions are being shared with everyone on all of our platforms. So today we are very excited to talk to Aron Perfect, the Associate Director of Building Projects and Maintenance at the Living Roof. And the Living Roof is atop the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. And I have to tell you, Aron, I am actually really excited to talk to you about this because I learned about Living Roof probably about 4 years ago, kind of investigating some things for a blog article. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is all of this? So, what was the original vision? Or wait a minute, let me just say welcome before I get into that. I was so excited. But welcome, Aron. Oh, no problem. So, what was the original vision for the Living Roof, and how does that vision collaborate with the overall vision of the California Academy of Sciences?
I guess I'll preface with a little bit about the background. And I haven't been here for I've been here for about 5 years. So I wasn't here during the original construction and design. So I can't speak to every detail of it, but I will give you the best answer that I can based on what I know from working with the architects that did design the building and other staff that were here during the construction. But so my understanding of the original vision for the roof, there's 7 hills that mimic the 7 hills of San Francisco. We'd like to have a native landscape up there, integrating with the park, and then offering, another exhibit for guests that come here as well, sort of, so to speak. And so I think Renzo Piano, the original architect, actually described the concept for the Living Roof as literally lifting up a piece of the park and putting the building underneath it. So if you kind of imagine that, we're trying to kind of integrate directly into the park. It's in such an iconic location in San Francisco. We wanted to integrate with the landscape around us. I think it fits the vision from the Academy of Sciences very well in that regard. We have volunteers that work on the roof, both from corporate groups and just local volunteers that come here helping to maintain the space. We have in-house scientists that use the roof. They have studies that have been done on the roof. There's also bones that are drying out up there to be used in the academy and be a part of our collections eventually.
That's
And
very interesting. Please elaborate on that.
well, I'm not really sure of, all the details. I do see them up there, and I work with the scientists that, kind of use that space because they kind of coordinate with us to use it. But I believe, it has to be laid out in sun for a specific amount of time so that I'm not sure, I'm not a scientist,
Right. I understand.
but, so
But they know what they're doing.
oh yeah, they've been doing that since we opened. It's been years and years. And so that's one way that, that kind of integrates with our vision and the science and research that we do at the Academy. I think the entomologists have done studies for different types of insects that have been found on the roof. And then, just to kind of give you a little bit of background of the Academy. So our mission is kind of to regenerate the natural world through science, learning, and collaboration. And so, how that kind of coincides with having a living roof. I'm kind of giving a few examples, but, we're teaching guests about, the native landscape in the park. We're giving the wildlife in the park a natural refuge for the native plants that are up there. And then, the roof ultimately is kind of like a functioning dynamic ecosystem that we have, on top of the museum. So it's really, there's other elements we'll get into, I guess, too.
Sure. And
Yeah.
and actually really my question was, and you've answered some of that to some degree, why was it so important to make the roof more than an architectural feature? But I think it's so aspirational. For people to know that your roof is a space and it can actually be useful for something more than just being a roof.
Yeah. It doubles as, obviously the architectural features of it, right? There's the iconic 7 hills that we I mentioned we've got domes all around it. But yeah, like you're saying, I mean, it is more than just a roof. It functions as a living ecosystem and an exhibit. And, it also has a lot of benefits to the museum itself in terms of like keeping things insulated and temperatures down and naturally functioning for some of the HVAC in the building and all of that. So,
Yeah, you're going right into my next question, which was the roof actually helps regulate the building's interior environment. And now, can you go into a little bit about that? I mean, how does that happen?
yeah, sure. There's a few components of it, but sort of what I just mentioned first, touch on. I mean, the soil that's up there, there's about 6 inches of soil or so, 6 to 8 inches at some points, but the plants and the soil up there kind of directly help insulate the building. So it keeps the temperatures naturally a lot cooler on the roof surface inside of the building due to that kind of soil and plant matter absorbing most of the heat. So that helps insulate the building in one way. And then the other kind of way that this design and living roof sort of helps keep the building cool naturally, there's automated skylights and louvers. So on our ground floor, there's 4 different curtain walls or glass walls around the building, and each of them have operable windows at the bottom that can open and close. And then there's louvers as well on those walls. And
Okay, I'm going to ask the obvious question. What is a louver?
essentially like a window that you can open and close
Okay,
just to allow airflow through.
okay.
And so if you think about it, we'll open the windows at the ground floor, and then there's skylights at the roof. So scattered around the domes, there's probably over 30 or around 40 skylights at the roof. And not all of them are operable, but some of them are, so they can open. And so the way that this works is when there's heat, it gets trapped in those domes as the heat rises. And so you'll have the skylights open at the top, and you'll have the windows open at the bottom, and it'll kind of create a natural air conditioning, so to speak. The cool air will be pulled in through the ground floor, and the hot air will rise through the domes and be ejected out the top.
That's
So,
awesome. So that's really the role that weather stations and automated systems play in the daily operations. What is that? What do those things do?
sure, yeah. So, in order to understand it, I guess give you a little overview of what the weather stations are. So, we have 2 separate types of weather stations. There's one group of them that is used for the irrigation system, and then another group that's used for what we were talking about, which is the HVAC. It's kind of natural cooling and heating of the building. So they kind of consist of a few basic components for each one. There's a temperature and humidity sensor, there's a rain sensor and a rain bucket to see how much rain is being collected, and then a wind sensor as well. And some vary in different ways, and there's other components, but those are at a basic level, tracking the weather. And so what these kind of do is, you know, they help that system to operate. So when it's, reaches a certain temperature, those windows will open. It'll also kind of have interlocks there, which will say, is it raining? Don't open the windows if it's raining, right? So that we don't get water inside the building. And then, the irrigation program is kind of similar, where it will kind of be able to adjust watering times or, skip a day of watering if we had rain that night. So it takes a lot to get these systems to be functioning properly. It's a lot to maintain and troubleshoot. And there's a lot of, background things that you don't really think about, wiring and controls. And yeah, it's quite
I was
complicated.
saying it really has to be very intuitive as well, just on its own, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All the different things that work together. I'm wondering also, just in this is just me thinking, does the roof operate with any kind of AI? I'm imagining that these things are probably coming, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's sort of different than traditional AI if I have to kind of describe it, but it's more of like there's an automated system that helps the whole building run. And so that's, we've had these in buildings for, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 plus years.
It's the AI before the AI. Okay.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it's programming that it's code, and there's a program, our building management system that we run. And so it will keep, temperatures within a certain band, or turn on and off as needed automatically. And so it sort of is an early version of AI. Yeah.
Tell me what it is that your position does specifically.
Sure. Well, my position, it's sort of changed over the years. I
Mhm,
started doing capital projects mainly, so I was a project manager.
mhm.
I still do those, but I manage a team of project managers now. And I also have our maintenance team under my purview as well. So I've managed a lot of projects for the roof. Anything larger than about $10,000 or would involve contractors is typically something that I would help with. Replacing irrigation spray heads, we did that a few years ago because they had degraded pretty badly due to the UV constantly, sunny up there or foggy at
Yeah.
least.
Mhm.
We are testing some new plants and new soil types on some of the domes. So we have erosion. The slopes on some of the domes is almost like 30% at some points. It's steeper than it looks. So, we're testing different soil types and mixes to see what's the best for water retention and erosion control for different types of plants. There's also like simple things such as like painting the skylights or there's a trim around the edges we have to paint. And there's sometimes are leaks through the building in these areas or gutters, cleaning drains. I mean, I sort of manage the contractors that do all of that work and do the maintenance for the roof.
I imagine an incredible amount of maintenance to upkeep the living roof, and also is wilding part of the equation? Just curious.
Yeah, to answer the wilding, I guess, I do think it's kind of a fundamental part of the equation. We get seeds that are blown in from different areas around the park. You get birds bringing in seeds all the time, and other wildlife as well that gets to the roof. Native species compete up there, and you do get invasive, weeds and other things as well due to the wildlife that brings them in. So I think some of the goal is kind of to let this be a living, breathing ecosystem evolve naturally, but we do also have to keep things in check with invasive species or things that could destroy the roof structure as well if they get too big of a hold on the soil and the root structure and such. And then to, I guess, answer your question about maintenance, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot different than your traditional front lawn or just a flat roof that you'd have some waterproofing membrane on. So you manage it with a maintenance contract with a landscaping contractor. So they do the day to day sort of like weed control and weed abatement, erosion control, pruning, drain cleaning, all of these types of kind of weekly tasks. And then, like I was kind of telling you earlier, my group also helps with some of the larger capital projects that we do. So we have, one or two of those each year that will sort of help to maintain and extend the longevity of the roof.
And I'm imagining, like I said, and like you said, there's a lot of maintenance that is involved with this. I was also just wondering, how do you kind of work around this something that you're doing every day while visitors are going on? I mean, because I'm imagining you have to do this while visiting hours are happening. And does that just really just become part of the whole demonstration of the roof?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a core challenge for my job in general because any projects on the public space have to be it's the public can see it, right? So on the roof it's a little bit easier. There's a platform where guests can observe the roof deck, but they cannot walk onto the actual roof itself. And so we're kind of lucky in that regard where we can do the work during the day and we don't have to worry about you know any interaction with the guests that could be like some sort of, I don't know, it's too loud or someone could end up pulling out a plant that we just planted or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
So
I
we don't yeah,
I can
don't need
imagine
to.
that would be just horrible to have to
Yeah,
contend with. So,
but it is, yeah, I think the guests really enjoy, from my experience at least, I've gotten a lot of actual interest from children specifically are very interested in construction projects when we're doing them. They'll oftentimes I've seen we're doing I don't know, some work in a part of the building and children will kind of gravitate towards that and be pretty interested in what's going on even though it's not a part of any exhibit. I think it's just curiosity is always there,
yeah.
and it is something you don't see every day. So it's kind of cool to people will point at us while we're doing a job walk and be like, oh, they're on the roof. Look at them, like So it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I would imagine that some of them are thinking, definitely in certain age groups, oh, how could I get involved with something like that? Have you had those questions too?
Yeah, it's pretty rewarding in that regard, I think, because this isn't like, I mean, it is a common job, like, construction and project management and stuff like that are everywhere, but it's kind of cool to promote that sort of that you can kind of describe what you're doing, and you can kind of talk to kids or even teenagers or adults even will ask about it too. So it's pretty cool to kind of describe what you do because this job specifically, you're not working at a museum with a planetarium, living roof, rainforest, natural history museum. It's not very common, so it's cool
And
to
it's
kind of,
something new every day, isn't it? I'm sure.
yes, definitely.
Right. So you were talking about the seven hills and also just go in a little bit deeper about the seven hills and the solar panel edges chosen as part of the design, if you would go into that a little bit more.
Sure. Again, I'm going to preface this with I was not involved into the design,
Right,
so
right,
I'm going to do
right.
my best.
Sure.
But I think the hills are, from my understanding, kind of a visual nod to the city's topography. So the domes, I believe there's seven hills of San Francisco, which are, I can't name all of them off the top of my head. At one point I
No
could.
need, no need.
But it's kind of to mimic that sort of topography on our roof since we're trying to kind of integrate with the landscape around us and the park and kind of give an homage to like San Francisco. Um, so, they also have the HVAC sort of functions that we talked about earlier, and they do also something that I didn't mention, but the hills kind of offer variations in different shades. Like it'll shade certain parts of the roof or provide wind protection for a certain area or different moisture. At the bottom, it's got more water than at the top. And so, like, that will also help with the diversity of plant species that are planted on the roof. And then kind of addressing the solar panels and then why those were chosen as part of the design. I think, there's multiple kind of etched glass architectural features on the roof. So there's these smaller kind of gray squares that are etched into the glass there's a canopy structure all around the roof. And so there's, I think, over 60,000 of those are solar panels, but there are many more too that actually aren't solar panels. So it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two. They integrate very well to the design. And the solar panels that we have provide about like 5 to 8% of the energy for the building. And so I think, they were kind of integrated because, that would have been a design aspect either way. And so adding the solar panels will help reduce the, carbon footprint and the environmental footprint that the museum has. And so I think it's kind of,
Saves money too, I'm sure.
yeah, 5 to 8% adds
Yeah.
up over time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we wanted to integrate more environmental benefits to the building, being that it was, such a, I don't know, kind of a sustainable design.
Right, right.
And that's my understanding.
Could you explain the vegetation trays and how they're used? Also, the trays have a unique composition consisting of tree sap and coconut husk. And why were those materials selected? I'm very curious about
Sure. So my understanding is these were used on the original sort of rollout of the plants on the roof. So from what I've been told, or what I at least know, there were about like 50,000 or more of these trays that were actually put together offsite. They're kind of like bio trays of sorts with plants and soil planted in these trays made of the coconut husk and tree sap. Um, so these were planted in various different areas around the roof, excuse me, in a grid pattern. And then I think the reason they were done in sort of these trays is so that the roots can establish. And then the materials that were used naturally will decompose into the landscape over time. So I don't believe I think at this point they're part of the soil.
that.
And so it was kind of, I believe, trying to establish some root structure so that the soil would be not solidified, but, like stuck in place and wouldn't erode over time. And so, instead of using a plastic tray that would, you know,
Not be as
crack
useful.
or, yeah, it's not what we wanted to use for the roof. And so the coconut husks, I think, are kind of like a sturdy, porous container that eventually decompose, like I said. So That's my understanding of what we
And there's
exactly.
always really a natural solution. I'm saying this having no scientific knowledge whatsoever, but it just seems like, just going back to even historical times, that there's always a way to incorporate something natural that will get the job done. So love that. So Aaron, how does the roof support birds and insects and other urban wildlife? And could you also give us an example of the most interesting animal or insect life that you've seen on the roof?
Yeah. I guess I'll start with the interesting animal because that's kind of a fun one. The animal that I mean, I guess that I'll give two examples because they're both pretty cool. There's red-tailed hawks that we have in the park, and so you can kind of hear them before you see them. Usually, they'll be
Mhm,
flying overhead with their kind of iconic noise that hawks make.
mhm,
Um, and so you can see them flying around the roof, either hunting or sometimes they'll take breaks, kind of just resting in different areas, and they're quite large and cool to see. And then I think a little bit cooler though is a great horned owl. Um, we have a few owls that like to kind of live near the academy, if I could say that, but they
wow.
from time to time, you will see them throughout the park, nesting in trees, um, pretty close to our building. And we've been so lucky even to have one that loved to perch. I guess it was good and bad. Loved to perch right above our windows
Uh,
on our um, on one of our office sides of the building. And so while he did drop a lot of bird poop on the windows, it was very interesting to see the owl up there.
Wow.
And just like, how native wildlife kind of still gravitates to like, a large museum and large building in the middle of a park. So that's pretty cool. Um, and
I
then
imagine you probably witnessed some predatory things too, though.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it hunting in real
Mhm.
time. So it's
Mhm.
looking for mice and other rodents in the landscape around the park.
Mhm.
Um, so it's pretty cool to see.
Very.
And then I guess in regards to the like birds and insects and wildlife around here, like I was talking about, there's a lot of native plants on the roof. We have a lot of native species. There's beach strawberries, dahlias, poppies, fescue, yarrow, just a few that come to mind. And these kind of attract the native pollinators, bees, birds, butterflies. And there's been some efforts, I believe. I'm not sure if it's currently something that's being done, but in the past, we've had different plants that we've put up there to try and attract threatened butterfly species and other native animals. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so how does the roof contribute to the city's environmental health and identity? I would imagine it's a pretty popular place to come to, and just the museum in itself as well. I would imagine, and then that's the extra bonus on top.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, if you Google things to do in San Francisco, it's one of the, I don't know, how top 10 things, I guess, or,
Hmm.
it'll pop up on your list of places you can visit, which is nice. And I think it's definitely worth checking out. There's, uh, in regards to like the city's, identity and health and things like that, or environmental health, sorry.
Hmm.
Um, there's steel in the original building. I believe all the steel that was built on the roof or built for the roof was recycled. And there's a lot of recycled products that go into this building as well. So, like, there's insulation that we used, shredded denim jeans that had been
Wow.
recycled. So, yeah, that's in some of the walls. It's
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? That's
yeah,
awesome. You
it's
know,
very cool.
obviously it's near and dear to our hearts because it's we deal with textiles. So
Yeah.
mhm.
So that's really cool. And the roof acts like we've been talking about a natural barrier for keeping the environment inside and outside sort of more natural, so to speak, and comfortable for everyone. But it also, I think, kind of keeps the microclimate in the park a lot more close to what it would be naturally.
Hmm.
Instead of having a giant concrete building that's just radiating heat in the park.
Right.
Um, and I guess like finally it kind of it's kind of like a flagship model for architecture that integrates local wildlife. It kind of proves that we don't need to have them be separate. You can have urban development, and you don't necessarily have to sacrifice wildlife with it.
That's awesome. Planet Aid, the corporate office is located in Elkridge, Maryland. One of the people that I talked to was the National Aquarium of Baltimore, National
Mm.
Aquarium in Baltimore. They have a they have a structure that's kind of like what you have, but just on the ground, right
Hmm.
outside of their aquarium, right in the middle of Baltimore City.
Yeah.
So I think that's just awesome because they'll talk about otters coming up and even maybe a fox or something coming from,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, where in the world are these things coming from? So,
Yeah.
but if he
Very
builds it,
cool.
they will come, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Um, so, what kind of feedback do you get from visitors? And I know we talked a little bit about that as far as the children. Does it align with what you're endeavoring to accomplish through your mission? Um, what are they saying to you?
um, so I don't work in guest experience,
Right, right,
but I
right.
do work with that team
Hmm.
quite closely on some projects, and when we're coordinating things with the public. So I'll give you my best answer based on what I've learned
Sure.
through them. But the visitors, from what I know, often really enjoy the living roof. It's pretty much always given overwhelmingly positive feedback from our guests. So you know, people will go up there. There's been engagements or proposals that have taken place up there. I've seen some photos
Nice.
before, people snapping pictures. Um, it's kind of an iconic look. The dome structure is kind of unlike any other building in San Francisco, and the structures, the living aspect to it. It's kind of an architectural rarity, and so I think that visitors tend to enjoy that because they don't get to see it elsewhere usually. And then I guess kind of how that aligns with our mission. I kind of spoke to this before, but I really do think it aligns pretty perfectly with our mission. We're transforming the natural world through science, learning, collaboration, and all of these can be found on the roof. Kind of transforms climate science and conservation concepts into a tangible experience for the guests.
Have you found that there are other museums that are trying to do things like this as well now?
Yeah. Um, I can only speak to the ones that I've spoken with, but we recently worked with a library, I believe in a library in North Dakota. I think it's the presidential library that just got
Hmm.
recently built, and we had kind of spoken with them about, what have we learned over the years about having a living roof because their library is going to have a living roof as well. Um, and so collaborating with other institutions that are, constructing these living roofs, or what are the lessons we've learned over the years, what should we build into this, how much maintenance does it take, those are the sort of conversations that we've been having. And so it's cool to see that being integrated into other buildings and this kind of design. And it'd be great if we could do more of it. It takes a lot of maintenance.
I'm sure.
But it's definitely worth I think the payoff is worth it.
And again, just even as I said earlier, I believe it is very aspirational. I haven't been to San Francisco. I've been to San Diego, and I saw that there was quite a bit of living, breathing, uh, t- topiary things happening on some of the roofs there. So I,
Yeah.
I think that that's awesome because it doesn't have to be exactly what you're doing because obviously people don't have teams to do that kind of thing. But just to be able to explore maybe doing something on the roof, and because it is ultimately something insects and the ecosystem will draw to naturally. Is I
Yeah.
mean, would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it definitely, um, as we add more native plants or try to diversify the roof, it helps to bring native wildlife into the park, I think, and keep it
Right,
here. Right. So,
right. Very good. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. I will say this again, as I started out, I said that I was looking for information on a blog for the 7 sustainable solutions to see. This is back in 2022. And I started getting all this information and seeing, oh my gosh, I was like, what is this place? It just looks like something that I would just love to go to. Now, I know I'm a little dashed in my hopes because of the fact that I thought that I would be able to be walking up on the roof, but that's okay. But I do understand. But it's an awesome. It sounds like such an awesome place to be, and I really hope that it continues for a long time, just bringing lots of joy to the children of the
Mhm.
city, as well as I'm sure you get international guests who are coming as well. So
Yeah, well, we're always working to improve it, and if you're ever in the area, let me know, and I can walk
don't
you
don't
around a
don't
little
don't
bit.
make promises you can't keep, Aaron. All right. Well, thank you so much to Aron Perfect from the Living Roof. It was definitely awesome to discuss the Living Roof. It seems like a no-brainer when you come to San Francisco. So thank you for joining us for this episode of Sustainable Solutions with Planet Aid. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and hit that like button, hit your notification bell, and also share the episode. Your support helps us to keep bringing more episodes like this to you. And we hope that you've been inspired by the ideas we've explored today. And we encourage you to search for sustainable solutions that you can pursue to be a good steward in your neck of the woods and beyond.